I found the folder by accident, and I wish I hadn't. It was labeled with my name. Not subtly, not hidden, just my name, sitting there on the shared drive like it belonged. At first I thought it was some routine documentation. I opened it without thinking. That was the moment everything started unraveling. Before that, my life was stable. Not perfect, but predictable. I had a wife, 2 kids, a decent house, and a job I'd worked years to earn. I was respected at work. People came to me for decisions. I thought I'd built something solid. At home, things were quieter. My wife and I weren't as close as we used to be, but I told myself that's what happens after years together. Routine replaces passion. You get used to the silence. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt like it was falling apart. And then I opened that folder. The first file I clicked was a timeline. A literal timeline of my work, emails, decisions, small mistakes blown out of proportion, meetings summarized in a way that made me look careless, even incompetent. It went back months. Maybe longer. At first I laughed. I actually laughed. I thought, who has time for this? Then I noticed the name on the document owner. Daniel. My colleague. The guy I sat next to every day. We'd worked together for almost 3 years. I trusted him. We had lunches together, complained about management, joked about deadlines. I'd even defended him once when upper management questioned his performance. I kept scrolling, and the laughter died. There were screenshots of private conversations. Notes about my leadership weaknesses. Even observations about my mood, like I was some kind of subject being studied. It didn't feel like work anymore. It felt personal. I didn't confront him right away. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was part of some audit. Maybe management asked him to track things. Maybe I was overreacting. But then I saw another file. Strategy. That's what it was called. Inside, it outlined how he planned to present this evidence to upper management to position himself as a stronger candidate for my role. My role. The one I'd spent nearly a decade climbing toward. There were bullet points about timing, about leveraging, recent instability, in my performance. There were even drafts of emails he planned to send. It was methodical. Calculated. And the worst part? It wasn't entirely fabricated. Some of the mistakes were real. Small things I thought didn't matter. Moments where I was distracted, stressed, tired. He had been collecting them. Quietly. For months. Looking back, the signs were there. Daniel had started asking more questions lately. Innocent ones, I thought. Hey, how did that meeting go? Did you send that report yet? Are you okay? You seem stressed. I thought he cared. There were times he'd offer to help with tasks, then follow up later in a way that now feels deliberate. Like he was checking boxes. Even the jokes feel different in hindsight. Little comments about leadership, about how some people aren't cut out for pressure. I laughed them off. At home, things weren't helping. My wife had been distant. More than usual. Late nights, more time on her phone, less interest in anything I said. I assumed it was just another phase. I didn't connect any of it. I didn't want to. Because connecting it would mean admitting something was wrong. Not just at work, but everywhere. The turning point came 2 days later. I was at home, sitting on the couch, staring at nothing while my wife was in the kitchen. Her phone buzzed on the table next to me. I didn't mean to look. But I did. The message preview said, "Did he suspect anything?" My stomach dropped. I told myself not to unlock it. That I was crossing a line. But I already knew something was off. And once you start doubting, it's like you can't stop. I opened the message. It was from Daniel. The conversation wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. They had been talking for months. Not just casually, intimately. There were messages about meeting up, about being careful, about me. About me. Is he still clueless? That's what he wrote. And my wife responded, yes. He trusts you. I felt something inside me crack. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just quietly breaking. All the pieces started aligning in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. The folder. The evidence. The timing. This wasn't just about my job. This was something else entirely. Something deeper. Something uglier. I didn't confront her immediately. I just sat there, holding her phone, reading and rereading the same messages until they blurred. When she walked back into the room, I don't think I even looked up. I asked her one question. Do you know Daniel? She froze. Not in a confused way. Not in a, what are you talking about? way. In a caught way. That silence told me everything before she even spoke. She tried to play it off at first. From your work? I mean, I've heard you mention him. I held up her phone. The color drained from her face. And then came the denial. The half-truths. It's not what you think. But it was exactly what I thought. Worse, actually. She admitted it in pieces. First it was just talking. Then it was emotional, not physical. Then, finally, after I pushed, after I showed her more messages, it became the truth. They'd been seeing each other. 4 months. It started accidentally, she said. He reached out to her through social media. Said he wanted advice about me. That turned into conversations. Conversations turned into something else. She said she felt lonely. That word hit me harder than anything else. Lonely. While I was right there. I asked her if she knew about the folder. She hesitated. That hesitation was worse than the answer. Yes, she said eventually. She knew. She knew he was collecting information on me. She knew he was planning to take my position. And she didn't stop it. She didn't warn me. In fact, some of the messages suggested she had helped him. Small details about my schedule, my stress levels, things I'd said at home. I felt sick. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was collaboration. I confronted Daniel the next day. I didn't plan it. I just walked into the office, went straight to his desk, and asked him to step outside. He acted confused at first. Calm. Almost amused. Until I mentioned the folder. Then his expression changed. Not to guilt. Not to shame. To irritation. Like I had ruined his plan by finding out too early. He didn't deny it. That's what shocked me the most. Not even a flicker of hesitation, not a moment where he tried to spin it or soften it. He just accepted it. Like we were discussing something mundane, like a missed deadline or a scheduling conflict. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and started explaining it to me like I was supposed to understand. Said it was nothing personal. That phrase again. Like that somehow erased everything. Like the months of calculated observation, the manipulation, the betrayal, all of it could be filed under just business. He told me he had been watching me for a while. That he noticed I was slipping. That leadership was about perception, and I wasn't managing mine well. He said he simply accelerated what was inevitable. I remember asking him, "So you decided to destroy my career?" And he just shrugged. As for your wife, he added, almost as an afterthought, that wasn't planned. But it didn't hurt. Didn't hurt. That's the moment something in me shifted from anger to something colder. Something emptier. Because I realized I wasn't even a person to him. I was just an obstacle. Everything collapsed quickly after that, but not in a clean, cinematic way. It was messy, slow, bureaucratic, the kind of unraveling that drags on and forces you to relive everything over and over again. I reported him. I had to. I brought the folder, the messages, everything I had. HR got involved almost immediately, and suddenly my private nightmare became a formal process. There were meetings. Endless meetings. People I barely knew asking me to walk them through the situation. Writing statements. Rewriting them. Clarifying timelines. Explaining context to people who nodded politely but kept typing like they were documenting a case study instead of someone's life falling apart. Daniel didn't disappear overnight. He was still there, at least at first. Different floor, different meetings, but still present. Still breathing the same air. And the worst part? Even when you're the one who was betrayed, you don't walk away untouched. They went through everything. Not just his actions, but mine too. Every mistake he documented suddenly became relevant. Every delayed email, every missed detail, every moment I wasn't at my best, all of it was laid out under scrutiny. I wasn't fired. But I wasn't safe either. It felt like standing on cracked ice, never knowing when it might finally give way. At home, it was worse in a completely different way. My wife cried constantly. Real tears, not performative ones. She apologized over and over again, like repetition might somehow undo what had already been done. She said it just happened. I hated that phrase. Nothing just happens over months. The kids noticed. There's no hiding something like that, no matter how careful you think you're being. Tension seeps into everything, the way you speak, the way you move, the silences that stretch too long. Dinner became unbearable. We'd sit there, all four of us, pretending everything was fine. Talking about school, about work, about nothing. The kind of surface-level conversations you have with strangers, not family. They could feel it, even if they didn't understand it. I caught my daughter watching us one night, really watching, like she was trying to solve a puzzle no one had explained to her. That broke something in me all over again. I started sleeping in the guest room shortly after. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Just space. Just time to think. But if I'm being honest, it was also because I couldn't stand being near her anymore. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't recognize her. And maybe worse, I didn't recognize the version of myself that had been living with her, completely unaware. The distance made things clearer though. Painfully clear. Every quiet night, every moment alone, stripped away the excuses I had been holding on to. This wasn't something small. This wasn't something you patch over and move on from. It had roots. Deep ones. And they weren't going away. I eventually asked her to leave. Even now, that sentence doesn't feel real when I say it in my head. It feels like something someone else would do, not me. I always thought I'd be the kind of person who tries to fix things, who holds on. But there's a point where holding on just means breaking yourself more slowly. The conversation itself was quiet. No screaming. No dramatic accusations. Just exhaustion. She cried again, of course. Asked if there was anything she could do, anything at all to fix it. Promised therapy, transparency, anything I needed. And for a brief moment, a very brief, dangerous moment, I considered it. Because history is heavy. Years together don't just disappear. Memories don't vanish because of betrayal. They linger, they pull at you, they make you question your own decisions. But then I thought about the messages. About the folder. About the fact that she didn't just betray me emotionally, she actively participated in something meant to dismantle my life. And I knew. She didn't argue much in the end. I think part of her had already accepted it before I even said the words out loud. Or maybe she had already left, emotionally, long before any of this came to light. Daniel was suspended during the investigation, but there was no dramatic ending there either. No big confrontation, no official punishment that felt satisfying. He resigned before anything could be finalized. Just like that. He removed himself from the consequences. And somehow, that felt fitting. It's been months now, and I still don't feel like I'm on solid ground. I still have the job, technically. They didn't push me out, didn't demote me, didn't formally penalize me. On paper, I survived. But it doesn't feel like survival. It feels like aftermath. Like walking through a place where something terrible happened, Even if everything looks the same. Same desk, same meetings, same routines, but none of it feels familiar anymore. I second-guess everything now. Every interaction. Every conversation. Every moment someone asks me a question or offers help, there's this voice in the back of my mind wondering what their angle is. That wasn't me before. At home, the silence is different too. Not tense like before, just empty. The kids are adjusting, I think. Or maybe they're just learning to live around something they don't fully understand yet. That thought keeps me up at night more than anything else. Sometimes I sit alone and try to pinpoint the exact moment things started to break. Was it work stress? The distance in my marriage? Something I missed? Something I ignored? I go in circles. Because the truth is, there probably wasn't one moment. Just a series of small fractures I chose not to see. What I do know now is this. Trust doesn't collapse in a single dramatic event. It erodes quietly in the background, while you're busy living your life and assuming everything is fine. And by the time you finally see it clearly, really see it, you're not standing on solid ground anymore. You're standing on something that gave way a long time ago. I still think about that folder sometimes. Not with shock anymore. Just with this dull, persistent understanding that it didn't create the truth. It just revealed it.